Welcome to Hard Hats and Horizons, the podcast where we dig deep into the construction and economic development shaping the future of Dallas-Fort Worth. We bring you insights from industry leaders and visionaries who are driving growth in North Texas. From construction projects to industry trends and insights, we cover it all. So grab your hard hat and join us as we explore the people and projects shaping the skyline of DFW. Now, here is your host, Andrea Pender.
Okay, well, today we have Abdullah Emad on the podcast, and he is the CEO of United Design Consulting Engineers, otherwise known as UDC. So I am super excited to have him on the show today. We've known each other for probably going on 10 years at this point. So let's kind of start us off. Tell us how you got to UDC.
Well, I'll start back with how I got into engineering. It was pretty stereotypical. I mean, I was the math nerd. I was building Lego blocks. I was super into trains growing up. And my dad was a mechanical engineer, who was a pilot. So initially I started off in a route to do medicine, but as I went through the college courses, they weren't really resonating with me. So transitioned to engineering and did a internship in construction, which I really enjoyed, and started off my career post-college in construction. But my ultimate goal was to get licensed, and to be a licensed engineer, you have to practice under a licensed engineer. And that contracting firm didn't have one, and I made the decision in 2015 to switch over to consulting engineering. So I worked at an engineering firm for 10 years, and then I've always kind of wanted to go off and do my own thing, and sort of things aligned to make that possible. I found the right partner that balanced my weaknesses, and we both shared the same visions and goals. And we said, if we don't do it now, it's never going to happen.
Nice.
That's how we got here.
Yeah, I can remember years ago when I got my first job out of college and then decided to open my own photography business. It's like, I literally don't have anything to lose. Like, let's just do it. Because if you don't do it now, you're never going to do it. Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Let's see. What are some key moments or challenges that you have had in your career?
I can remember the first day working as an engineer, not really having any experience in CAD, which is the software that we use. And if there's engineers that are listening, they'll find this funny. I was asked to do an area takeoff on a pavement job. And there's two viewports that you can look at in AutoCAD filing. One is the model space and one is the actual viewport. And if you try to do area takeoffs in the viewport, the scale is off. And so there was this large parking job that I was doing a takeoff for my boss, and I kept coming up with the wrong area. And it was because I was doing it through the viewport, which should have been known if you had engineering experience, but that was my first day. So that was really learning AutoCAD was the biggest learning curve for me, because having worked in construction and not touching the software since sophomore year of college, that was a pretty big adjustment for me.
So did you do any sort of like training class online, or did you just dive in? Did you ask a bunch of questions? How did you become proficient in it?
Well, I was lucky to be mentored by Sarah. We shared an office, actually. It was the two of us diagonally back to one another. And she did a really, really good job of training me on how to use it. And she also prepared an internal training manual so that if I had questions and she wasn't there, it was something that I could reference.
Wow.
And then if I had downtime, I would watch YouTube videos that sort of aligned with whatever tasks I was doing at work.
Yeah, it's so interesting how you can there's an answer literally at your fingertips these days. You know, there's a YouTube video for everything. So yeah, that's interesting. I wonder why that they have the two different views and it's different measurements.
Well, the model space is typically where you do your drafting and your production and your work. If you tab over to the viewport, you're getting a preview of what you're going to print to a PDF. So it's sort of something you can look at before you actually plot it and publish it.
Got it. Interesting. What are some things that have motivated you, or some lessons that you have learned along the way?
One of my biggest motivating factors is my parents. They immigrated here and gave up their whole lives, their families, for a better life for us. And so when I look at what they sacrificed, it's a huge motivation for me to make sure that sacrifice was worth it. So I've really enjoyed breaking off and doing this because it's another step towards the fulfillment of the American dream. which is what I felt like they came here to see for their kids.
Oh, that's really interesting. So I'm going to have Javier, who owns Carco. He's going to be on the show in a few episodes. And so we're going to hear all about his story, but it's definitely the American dream as well. And it's interesting to see how different people have gone about that, you know? So that's interesting. I know that you've told me that, but hearing it in that sentence makes you like, oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Another challenge was navigating the college curriculum and just the whole process. Being a first generation and being the first in my family to go to college in America. It was just a different system and not one that my parents could speak to, but it was sort of a precursor to the figure it out theme that I just took on and figured it out. Now, I did go to a college prep school and that helped shape the mindset for the coursework, but actually going and selecting which classes you want and picking your major, that was new to me.
I think even so, my parents went to college, but I think even with that gap, that generational gap in between, it was still so different from when they went and then when I went. You know, it was kind of like, I don't know, I guess these counselors are just going to point them in the right direction. And I hope everything's, you know, because it was just different, you know? So, and that's interesting because my dad went right after high school. And then my mom went when I was in like kindergarten, first grade. So she was an evening student, you know, so they had different views of college too. So, man, I feel like every first kid in the family, even if their parents have gone, I think that they're probably like, nobody knows what to do. What do we do again? Well, good for you for hopefully you made it a little bit easier for others in your family.
Yeah, I think so. The other thing that I noticed that was different with my path is that my peers, when we were sophomores and juniors in high school, they were already doing college campuses and college tours. And those tours were based on where they wanted to go, based on what they wanted to do. And I really didn't have that sort of dialogue with myself until I had already started college. So I felt like I was a little bit behind the curve in that sense.
I mean, I feel like sometimes you don't know what you really want to do until you're like 30. So when
Right.
you're 17, sending in those college applications, sometimes you don't even know what's out there. I mean, when I was in college, I didn't know that there was business development for, you know, construction. And I wouldn't have thought, oh yeah, sign me up for that. Yeah, college is an interesting thing. I loved every minute of it. But yeah, it's interesting when you talk about all the schooling that's available for people these days. Let's see. What about mentorship? Talk to me about how mentorship has helped you over the years.
Good question. So Stephen Schwinn was a really big mentor of mine. There's a big technical aspect that comes to engineering, but arguably equally as important, if not more, is the relationship aspect. And that's something that you've helped me understand and learn as well. He really, I was able to come to client meetings pretty early on with him. And just seeing the way that he interacted with people, how people trusted him, and how he trusted us, it really enabled us to grow faster and traject through our careers a little bit quicker than what the typical pace would be. So he's been sort of a civil engineering mentor. And then I have a personal mentor as well. His name is Dan Jones. He's a podiatrist, and it's actually a connection through my high school alma mater. We ran into each other at the gym. I was wearing a green hoodie, and he approached me, and his son is 5 years younger than me. And we have lunch every 3 or 4 months. He checks in on me, asks how I'm doing. He's a business owner himself. He owns his practice. So I get to bounce ideas off of him on what that's like, some of the things that I should be looking out for. So he's been an excellent resource as well.
And then on the flip side of that, I know that you have mentored people as well. And I feel like you don't realize it maybe in the moment, like when you are talking to those younger than you. But I feel like I know when I mentor people, I come away from that conversation like, oh gosh, like I learned so much in the last hour. And I know that you were always kind of taking people under your wing and trying to help elevate them. So
I think sometimes we take for granted how much we know after we've been in the industry for so long. It just becomes second nature for us. And we have to take a step back and remember that scared first day engineer or whoever we were that first day on the job and try to be empathetic to that. And I try to shift my mindset when I'm in that mentor phase to remember what it was like for me and what really resonated with me and what helped me and try to pass that along to them. I've been super lucky to have excellent team members that I've gotten to work with. So it's always been natural But that's really been the overarching theme and how I approach it with them.
Some people listening may know, but we're kind of remind everybody, how many tests and everything do you have to take, and what's the timeline on that in order to become a PE?
Sure. So step one is you have to get an engineering degree from an accredited university.
Okay.
I was lucky that in tech, it was Texas Tech. There was a course called Preparation for the Fundamentals of Engineering exam. And they incentivized it to take the exam when we were in college by saying, regardless of your attendance, if you take and you pass this exam, you're getting an A in this course.
Oh.
And if you recall, I did not initially think that I was going to be an engineer.
Mhm.
I knew that I had a general contracting gig lined up, and I thought, I don't need to take this exam. Well, I wanted an A in the class. So I took the exam. It's an 8-hour exam. And after that, it's now changed. They've decoupled the requirements. Before, you had to practice under a professional engineer for 4 years. Then you were eligible to take the Principles and Practice of Professional Engineering exam, which is another 8-hour exam that specializes and focuses on the field of engineering that you're going to practice. Well, recently they decoupled it so you can take the exam really as soon as you pass the FE exam, which is the Fundamentals of Engineering exam, which I really encourage engineers to take advantage of because it's very academic. It tries to be more based on the practice of it, but there still is a heavy, heavy influence on the academics of engineering. And if you are fresh from college, when you've just taken all these intense technical courses, it's a natural transition to just sit down and take it. And it helps with the length of studying to take it. I can recall when I sat down to study for my PE exam, which was a second exam, it was a good 2 or 3 months of rehashing topics that I didn't really need in my particular field anymore, but I knew that I was going to get tested on. So really with all applicants and with all engineers that I talk to now, I highly recommend take the FE your senior or your last level of college and take the PE immediately afterwards. At that point, all you're waiting on is the time under your PE.
Yeah, I know. I remember when that happened a few years ago, and then everyone's like, you need to take it now. You need to take it now. I mean, I feel like 5 minutes after you've graduated, you're like, I'm done. I don't have to study anymore. And you just so quickly get out of that habit of studying that that's a hard one to get back into. So I feel like you had the hard version of, okay, now I have to work for 4 years, and then now I have to study. And I shouldn't say it's hard, but everyone's still having to take the test. But getting into that mindset of test taking 4 years later, that's a little tricky.
It is because you've left school and you've broken that habit that you had established. And so it was challenging for me to get back into it. It's nice to just only wait on the administrative items to get your license, which
go ahead.
Well, you have to get character references from active professional engineers. You have to pass an extensive background check. You have to get fingerprinted. So there's a lot that goes into it administratively, but it's nicer to have the test taking out of the way.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. Do you happen to know like what's the statistic on how many people pass it the first time? How many people have to take it multiple times? That 3-year curveball on that.
It really depends on the type of exam that you take. I want to say it's in the low 70s average for the first attempt. And it gets higher the second attempt, I believe. Don't quote me on that. But again, it does change based on which branch of engineering you're taking your exam in.
No, that's cool. As soon as that happened, I just thought, gosh, these young kids coming out, they don't even realize how helpful this is.
The format of the exam has also changed. You know, when I took it, it was a paper and pencil calculator. You come in with a big wagon of all your reference materials, your books, your notes. Now it's all taken on the computer, and you have a searchable reference PDF that you can search equations or references or definitions on. So it's changed how you take the exam now.
That's interesting. I'm just trying to think of I know I was in school a million years ago, but I think I would want my wagon of stuff almost because I'd be like, I know my notes are in this one and I know my notes and I've highlighted this page, but they're probably used to the PDF version now.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
The same way we put the time and the effort on familiarizing ourselves with our reference material, now that it's standardized, I would encourage test takers to be familiar with
that. That makes a lot of sense. That's smart. No, that's interesting.
Need reliable, high-quality service for your commercial project? Choose Carrco, the most trusted contractor in commercial painting and drywall in Dallas-Fort Worth. With over 30 years of experience, Carrco delivers top-tier craftsmanship across Texas. From expert painting to seamless drywall, we handle it all, on time and on budget. Transform your space with the professionals at Carrco. Visit carcopainting.com today. Carrco, where quality meets reliability.
Let's talk about something unique or surprising that you have had in your journey.
I didn't really know what land development civil engineering was. So it was a learning experience even as I applied for the job and came to learn about it. So what I've tried to do to change that is we go back and speak to college students about what it means to be a land development civil engineer. One of the biggest challenges that I had during my schooling is how do I use this technical information and make a career out of it? And it's been one of Julio and I's goals to bridge that gap with not only college students, but high school students as well. And my mom was an elementary school teacher, and for whatever it was worth, I went back and spoke to her elementary school students to talk about what it meant to be an engineer and even touch on the different branches of engineering. A challenge and something surprising for me is what land development engineering even meant. And then being able to pass that along to hopefully the next generation of engineers.
I can only imagine what little kindergartners' questions were. And then you're like, okay, I've got to get real clear on what I do. And I bet it was really helpful, really, to put together kind of future speaking material or something, because I'm sure it was silly questions that they asked, but not silly all at the same time.
No, you're right. And I tried to be more visual with the presentation. So I brought in a patch of grass and I poured some water on it. And I let them watch what happened as the water went through the grass. And then I brought a paver stone and I splashed water on that and to demonstrate how much more runoff was generated. One of the biggest things with civil engineering is the mitigation of stormwater and development that drives an increased quantity of stormwater. So I was trying to help them visualize what happens when you have an undeveloped piece of land and it rains versus when you have it developed and you have all this concrete and hardscape that generates more runoff.
You might consider just keeping that in all future presentations for everyone. That's funny, but no, that was smart. That was very creative to come up with that. So a few minutes ago, you mentioned Julio. So tell us a little bit about who he is.
Julio is an outstanding engineer. He also had a similar path with me where he had a starting in the contracting world. And his father's a surveyor as well. So he has a unique background where he's very, very competent in both surveying and engineering and with bridging the gap to construction. He used to have a business called OCM, Olvera Construction Models, where he took the grading plans that engineers produced with the background and knowledge of an engineer and converted them to grading models that contractors could plug into their equipment to do site grading. So he is on the cutting edge of technology. I really rely on him for the production side, the software side. And I mentioned before how he complements my weaknesses. Early on, I mentioned how weak I was initially in AutoCAD, and my experience and competence in it plateaued up to a certain point. I don't think Julio is going to see a plateau in it. He just is constantly learning and evolving on all the softwares available to us and how it helps bridge the gap to the plans that we produce and how those actually get constructed.
And what is his role at the firm?
He's the engineering manager.
Okay.
So he's a co-owner as well, and he produces and oversees the majority of the engineering.
Nice. That's exciting. I mean, if you don't make any changes, then you can't ever grow. No, and it's scary making those changes. But then there's some people who love like, ooh, new technology. Let me learn it. Let me try it out. Others like, I don't know, are we gonna need it? So it's great that you have him on your team.
Yeah, I'm super
No, that's
thankful.
really good. Okay, let's see. What's your perspective on some of the industry trends that are going on right now, and maybe any specific challenges in those trends that you're seeing?
I'm seeing a lot more design build delivery on projects. Hard bid, conventional hard bid, I've found typically has a sticker shock. And it's challenging as designers because you're working towards this goal and you issue drawings and come to find out the project is X million dollars over budget. So having a contractor partner that is a part of your team and reviewing drawings and giving feedback so that you're doing VE, which is value engineering, concurrently with design is super helpful in both delivery and in scheduling and in reducing RFIs, which are requests for information, which contractors will submit to you if they have questions once they're constructing the job. So having them in that room with you when you're designing and when you're coordinating helps them get an understanding of the vision of the plan set as it's coming together, and makes for a more streamlined delivery and construction process.
Nice. Yeah, there's are you attending is it DBAI, Design Build Association? I'll send you information about it. And they meet probably like quarterly. There's like a happy hour networking group of people. And there's contractors, architects, engineers, a handful of trade partners that are there because they love design build projects. So yeah, I feel like it's kind of an up and coming organization, but I feel like there's more and more projects that are design build. Once contractors have done it and they've realized, wow, we can have these great conversations as we, get the project started. So then it's not messy as you go on. Oh, that's interesting. Do you have any sort of actionable advice for any listeners who may be in a similar field, similar role? What's some of your advice?
Go out there and network, meet people, go have lunches, have coffees. You've been very good at being creative on how you're engaging with people. Go to a clay shoot. You'd be surprised what your connections can do for you. We haven't even advertised yet. All of our work has been word of mouth and referrals. And that's really the biggest compliment that you can get from someone, because that person is putting their reputation behind the backing of your firm. So if people get to trust you and they'll know that you'll quote unquote make them sleep easy at night, that's how you can generate the work. And if you focus on the relationship, the work will follow.
I mean, it really is all about that. You've heard me say it 1,000 times. You do business with people you know, like, and trust. And I mean, that really is the truth. I can remember years and years ago, I was hired to do an engineering job. My team was, obviously. The architect said, "Hey, are you going to be at the kickoff meeting?" And I was like, "I don't normally go to those, but I can." And I remember a week before the meeting, he said, "Hey, Andrea, just double checking." And I was like, "Yeah, it's on my calendar. I'll be there." And then he called the day before, "Hey, you are going to be there, right?" And I laughed and I said, "You do realize I am not the engineer." And he laughed and he said, "But I hired you. And so I want you at the meeting." And so I was at the meeting with all of the engineers, but he hired me because he had known me for years. And so if you're good at what you do and you build those relationships, then they'll go with you forever. So yeah, I hope that they start teaching the relationship part of it more at school. Like, you have to know the calculations, you have to do the math, but so much of it is relationship building. And that's a hard one to teach.
It is. It's a challenge because when we go to job fairs, we will have exceptional students come to us, but they won't make eye contact and they try to point us to their GPA on the resume, which is great. And it's a fantastic achievement in and of itself. But the practice of engineering involves a lot more of the personal touch. And that's something that I would emphasize that students and really even teachers that are teaching those students help come to grips with, because you've got to get out of your comfort zone to be successful in this industry.
I don't know if you remember this, but I'm on the board for the School of Communications at Purdue. And this was several years ago. And they added in a minor specifically for engineering students in communications. And I just remember thinking, gosh, if they can get the buy-in, if mom and dad can say, "Yes, son, it would be a great thing to minor in," or if the college counselors and things can encourage that. I thought, gosh, if they could come out with an English degree minoring in communications, that would be a game changer. I mean, really, it would be a game changer. What was your minor?
Math.
Yeah. And so that's what I'm like. I feel like all these engineers come out with minors in some sort of numbers, some sort of math, some sort of science or something. I'm like, gosh, if they could just give a couple more speeches in college, that could be a game changer.
The first 4 or 5 years of practice of engineering certainly leans heavy on the technical courses. But as you progress in your career, I've found that English, communication, those are the skill sets and the courses that I lean more on than I did the technical aspect. There's still a place for it, but when you start transitioning to a management role, communication is arguably the most important skill set that you can have.
Yeah. I was an English major in college, and my dad didn't share this with me until after I had graduated, but he was like, "I was so nervous about what were you going to do with an English degree?" And I'm like, "Why didn't you say anything?" And he's like, "I don't know. You just loved it. So I just let you do it." And I see all these like funny memes and things, and it's like, "Oh, this person." I'm like, no, you can do really great things with an English degree. Like, if you land in the right spot or if you talk to the right people. So I don't always make fun of the English major. What are you most passionate about in your job? right now?
Right now, it's got to be just the full circle moment that I'm experiencing now, having been raised in Dallas Fort Worth and being able to watch fantastic projects come to life.
Uh-huh.
There's a current project that I'm working on right now with Gordon Highlander. It's called Cafe Momentum, and it's a restaurant that's staffed by troubled juvenile kids that has fantastic meals that gives these kids a second chance. And it's really rewarding to be a part of these philanthropic types of projects. And it's important to be engaged in those types of projects too. So going back on seeing the development of the community, I had a chance to work on my alma mater, Green Hill, and doing the athletic facility there. So it's a full circle moment, being on campuses in my cleats as an athlete versus now contributing to the overall vision of the progression of their athletics program. It's really, really rewarding.
Well, and those are projects that you can see and feel and you can tell people about and they can go visit them. It's not an office building or some $10,000 a month, multifamily rental situation that you're never going to go in because it's not in the budget. So yeah, those are cool projects to be a part of. And you can mention Cafe Momentum and everyone will know what that is, or they'll be like, oh my gosh, I haven't been there in a while. That's what just went through my head. Like, it's been a few years since I've been there. Now I need to ask more questions. Where's the new spot? I'm assuming. Where's it going to be?
It's going to be on the intersection of Oak and Greenwood. It's sharing a piece of property with the Meadows Foundation.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah. Nice. That'll be an exciting one.
When
will it be done?
We're hoping to have construction start towards the back end of this year.
Okay.
And it should be a 12 to 18 month construction schedule.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. That's exciting. What are some of your future goals?
We want to expand and we want to grow, but we want to have sustained growth. We don't want to grow just for the sake of growing. We want to grow because the word calls for us to grow. I would like to continue to give back to the community that's allowed me to be in this position. One of the things that was most rewarding to me about working on Green was going back to the groundbreaking ceremony and seeing all the teachers and all the staff that had a hand in the process of getting me to where I was. So our eventual goal is to hopefully get into a little bit of development as well, where we are the developer and we can kind of do our own due diligence on pieces of properties. But that's a 10 to 15 year goal. Right now, we're just focusing on establishing the engineering practice.
Nice.
And getting the name out there.
Yeah, no, that's great. No, that's really good. What is a big struggle you're having right now and how are you tackling it?
I'm an engineer. And now that I'm starting to have to wear the hats of the accounting department and the marketing department and the business development market, that has been very challenging for me. But I've welcomed that challenge. It's shaken me out of complacency. And how I'm tackling the challenges is by leaning on industry experts. You helped the theme of being top of mind for business development. So simple as writing a card or reaching out just to reach out, not simply for project related items, but just keep in touch with people in the industry. For marketing, it's really been engaging a consultant and helping to convey what your vision is for the firm, for the branding, and helping to achieve that. For the accounting aspect, again, it's been engaging a consultant, but really asking questions and learning about the process and learning what the numbers mean and how do we give them the correct information so that the numbers in the accounting are accurate and good information for us to go off of. So it's really leaning on industry experts. It's being resourceful and leaning on the internet and in YouTube. And we talked about learning about AutoCAD through YouTube. I use YouTube a lot. We'll touch on this later, but I've got a big hobby in cars. And that's kind of where my crutch of YouTube started, as I'm a very visual learner. And if I needed to do something that I didn't know how to do, rather than having a printed manual that showed it to me, it would resonate with me a lot more if I watched a video of someone else doing it.
There's a video for everything.
Yeah.
And it blows my mind. And we'll touch on this in a minute. But yeah, there's things I'm like, how do you do? And I'm like, how are there a million videos on this? But I guess I'm not the only person asking the question. Okay, so we're going to move on to some personal stuff. So this is a perfect segue. What are some of your hobbies outside of work?
Well, I'm a big gearhead. I've loved cars since I can remember. My uncle was a mechanic, and anytime we needed to do a family oil change or a brake job, I was always in the garage holding a flashlight for him, grabbing the tools for him. And as the years progressed, he would put me to the task and he would supervise. And he'd
Let me hold the flashlight.
That's right.
fit in there.
The years went on, and I was finally able to have my own car, fun car. Now I was able to pull the motor out of it and build it with a friend and go to Ennis and do quarter mile races, go to Sulphur Springs Airport, do half mile land speed events. And so I really feel like that's tapped into what has brought me into engineering, is being very hands-on,
Mhm.
having a vision for something, accomplishing that goal, and then being able to feel it, hear it.
Mhm.
A big passion of mine, and it's really built a community for me. Some of my best friends I've met through the car community.
That's
Some
right.
of them even from the internet. There's a big car forum community for my old car, and there was a guy that I kept in touch with for 15 years, and just 3, 4 weeks ago, we met for the first time in person.
Oh, wow.
To
You've been
Vegas.
talking to this guy for 15 years.
Never
Yep.
met him in person,
Mhm.
and that was the first time, and it was just seamless. It was
Yeah.
an easy transition to the face-to-face relationship.
Uh-huh.
Some of my best friends I've haven't met in person,
Uh-huh.
and we just connected through the car community and,
Yeah.
and group chats and keep in touch that
Yeah.
way.
It's funny, like, I'm glad to hear that I'm not the only one that's like, oh, I made friends from the internet, you know, because I feel like probably my last, like, I don't know, 3 or 4, like, good girlfriends that I have, I met through Instagram. Like, we were just following the same people. And then I remember, I was like, hey, I'm going to go meet this girl for coffee. And he was like, what do you mean? Like, so you're just meeting some lady for coffee? And I was like, well, I'm just going to be like a mile away. I'll be home in an hour. And then we end up being very good friends. So, I mean, you don't have those people in your workplace, you know, living next door to you. So, yeah, I feel like it's probably not as weird as it sounds, but just nobody's saying it. I can remember this has been 20 years ago, but there was I think it was like a car forum that Will was a part of, but he had a truck. And so, like, he wanted to talk all the car stuff. And I remember that they let him go to all their, like, car meets and everything because he wanted to hang out with the people, but he just didn't have a car. He had a truck.
Yeah.
So, those were some of his good buddies, like, in college. So,
I got some strange looks from some folks when I told them I was meeting someone that was 30 years older than me that I had never met in person for a Vegas trip. But it was a fantastic trip. And to have something in common that is so integral to what I do on the weekends and what I'm so passionate about, it's an automatic to be close with them.
yeah. Yeah, no, that's fine. I like that. Let's see. Did you have a defining moment or a philosophy that you live by?
I think a big theme for me in my life is just showing up. And it goes to the gym, it goes for the career. I was terrified when I made the career transition from general contracting to engineering. I felt like I was behind the curve because people my age had already had an additional year of experience. I didn't have any experience with the software. I can remember when I got hired with Steven Schwind as my boss, I reached out to him before my first day and I said, hey, what books can I buy? What resources do I need to lean on? What sort of training do I need to do? And he just said, just show up. We'll teach you the rest. I think showing up is harder but easier than most people make it out to be, because once you're there, the rest will just come naturally. Sometimes if you've got a daunting task to do, I'll just tell myself, I'll just sit down and for 5 or 10 minutes and I'll do it. But before you know it, you're in a flow and you end up knocking out the task. So just sitting down and showing up, if you can do that, you surprise yourself.
I have a friend of mine that's a coach, and if she has clients that are just like in a funk, she'll just say, at least just drive to the gym. Just drive there. If you spend the time driving there, maybe you go home. And maybe the next day you drive there and you get out. And maybe you just pedal on a little bicycle for 5 minutes and you go home, but you're there. Like, you showed up. So you're probably going to do something. You
Right.
know, it is one of those things that, okay, I just have to do it.
Mhm.
What's step one? Yeah.
Right.
Who or what inspires you the most?
Oh, good question. I would have to say my dad.
Okay.
The theme of his life has just been sacrifice, and seeing what he's given up to give for us, it makes everything that I'm going through seem easy and to pale in comparison. So always having him as a reference point to juxtapose what I'm going through career-wise, professionally or personally, it just makes it seem less daunting. And I've enjoyed this transition in our relationship where now it's not so much being directed what to do by him. It's more of a coordinating and getting his input
Nice.
and him asking for my input. I've enjoyed that transition.
Nice.
And he's my motivation.
Nice. That's awesome. Okay, I have a quick fire round, which is never quick fire for me because I talk too much sometimes. Okay, what is the last book that you've read?
Gosh, this is going to be bad.
Or podcast or educational material of your choosing?
The last podcast that I heard was Die with Zero. Very interesting podcast. It was recommended to me by Jeff from McCarthy. Being a child of an immigrant, we are taught to save, 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 save. Whatever your living expenses are, you pay for that. Whatever is the delta, you throw in savings. And in this podcast, they touched on.
Was it a podcast or a book?
This is a podcast, but there is a book on
Okay.
it.
Yeah, I read the book.
So the author of it was
On a podcast.
guest host.
Got it. Okay.
For the podcast. Yeah. And they talk about how as the years progress, you may not have the same energy or the same motivation or the same health to do the things that you want to do. Everyone's saving for retirement, saving to do all this world traveling when they're in their 70s, maybe even 80s. But the question you have to ask yourself, and it's forcing me to ask myself, is, are you going to want to do those things when you're that age? So it really challenges you to focus on optimizing current fulfillment versus optimizing a balance in your retirement account to do something in the future that you may not want to do. They also talked about how much of a spender do you think you're going to be when you're older? And I've sat and thought about people in my life that I know that are in the later stages of life, and they're not big spenders. They just want to stay home and have their coffee and relax. And so what you are spending now and what your spending habits are now, it's more than likely that that's not going to be the case when you're further along in life. So that was a really interesting podcast and made me change how I thought about money and finances.
You should read the book.
Okay.
Or find it on audio, because then there's like a whole section on like donating money. And so there's a scenario in the book, don't quote me on these numbers, but it was a lady who was the front desk receptionist for a law firm, and she lived in a rent controlled apartment and for 1,000,000 years, and I guess when the partners would say they would invest in something, she would invest also at a smaller level, but she would also invest. And when she passed away, she left something like $1.2 million to the animal shelter. But it went on to say, just think if she had donated $10,000 a year, and then she could have seen the joy from the people, like, oh my gosh, this lady gave us a $10,000 donation. And she missed all of that because she, left it after she passed away. And so that was like one of the key takeaways that I had. Like, gosh, you do think like, what building do I want my name on? Like, that's not really my game plan, but it's like, gosh, if I could donate that $10,000 a year to the thing that I really love right now, it would bring you a lot of joy right now.
Right.
You should read the book.
Okay.
Good book. What's your favorite quote?
Muhammad Ali, flow like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
Okay.
He's just always been graceful but powerful, and I think it's possible to be both. When I was in college, my binder had Muhammad Ali's picture on the front, underwater boxing with that quote on it. So it was just a constant touch point and a reminder to myself just to keep going. So yeah, I'll say that one.
Nice. What is a skill you would like to learn?
Oh, good question. I would love to be a little more technically efficient in some of the programs that Julio utilizes.
Okay.
He is extremely efficient at it, and I want to be in a place where if he's on time off or if he's on PTO, I want to be able to balance that and keep providing that service to the clients. So that's something that as things settle down and we get out of the startup phase of this, I'd like to learn more on and be a little more efficient on.
What is the favorite city you have visited?
It's got to be Barcelona.
Okay.
The people were extremely kind and went out of their way to be helpful. I don't speak Spanish, so there was a communication barrier there. And one specific instance that stands out to me is I was looking for this specific restaurant, and I was asking a local if she knew where it was. And she didn't know English, but she grabbed my hand and directed me to someone that she knew. She knew spoke English.
Yeah.
And he helped me with my question. But she went out of her way to connect me with someone that spoke English to help me with that.
Oh,
So
that's nice.
that always stuck out to me.
That is very nice.
Yeah.
What is your favorite construction project that you have been a part of? You've done some cool projects.
There's two that come to mind.
Okay.
One is the Statler Hilton, and the other is 1401 Elm Street, the National.
That's what I thought you would say.
The Statler Hilton was one of my first jobs that I was ever involved in. 2015, and it was a rehabilitation of an abandoned building. But 1401 Elm Street, I really, really enjoyed that because that kind of seemed like the culmination of every little piece of engineering that I learned from the other projects all applied to one bigger project. It was challenging because it transitioned ownership, so it started and stopped. I believe it was in the transition periods of the city of Dallas's permitting program, so we had to learn how to apply uh, submissions to a new permitting portal.
Oh boy.
Was in construction during the peak of COVID. So I can recall that the firm that I was working for had to issue us a "you're allowed to be out and driving" letter. You're a critical employee. So that was another challenge. And then I remember just the contractor discovering all sorts of field discovered items that we didn't know about. There weren't record drawings of them. And we had to be very dynamic with it because they had the street cut open. And when a contractor issues an RFI to us, I've been in the contracting world. I know how hot they are, especially when it's dealing with lane closures and road closures in such a sensitive area of Dallas. Now, it was a blessing in disguise because traffic wasn't super heavy during the peak of the pandemic, but still there's a eagerness to take the project to completion. So that was a great project to see from beginning to end and get to go to the Monarch and have a nice bite to eat with friends and get to say, hey, I was a part of this project. Or point to the mountable curbs that cars get to mount onto for the valet drives. I can say, hey, I was a part of the layout and the design for that. It's rewarding.
Nice. Nice. Okay, so we're coming to the close. One of the things you put on the notes was you wanted to discuss what information you need in order to do your job. And so I know this is something we've talked about a lot over the years. So kind of talk to us a little bit. What all do you need? What help do you need that will help you kind of get started into a better end point?
So let's back up and talk about what civil engineers do,
Uh-huh.
because that's something that I learned really post-graduation, specifically land development engineers. We deal with everything that's outside of the building, above and below ground. So utility infrastructure, design of wet utilities, water, sanitary sewer, and storm sewer, and paving, grading, and drainage. So the items that we need to be successful on projects, I would say the most important thing that developers and architects can do is engage us early. Engage us at the feasibility study level. Engage us before you've purchased the piece of property. Let us do a site feasibility report to see what type of utility availability do you have. Do they have the sizing to take on the loading that your infrastructure is going to be adding to them? And we can help navigate the regulatory permitting process and also make you aware of off-site improvement costs that you need to be budgeting to see if the project makes sense on that particular piece of property. Is the property in floodplain? If so, let's engage a flood engineer to figure out what needs to happen to be able to reclaim some of that floodplain, or stick the development outside of that floodplain. Once we transition to design, the items that we need are a topographic survey, which is different than a title survey because it contains existing elevation information. One of the biggest challenges that we come across, when, especially if we're involved in a project only at the start of DDs, is the renderings of a site will be on this nice flat piece of property and it looks beautiful. And then we come in like a wrecking ball and tell them, well, no, you've got to have retaining walls here.
Yeah.
This is not going to work. You got to shift this portion of the building. So architects have the vision, and we help craft that vision into reality based on site constraints. So a site plan, a topographic survey, and the earlier the engagement with your civil, the better, because they can help navigate some of the site challenges, whether it be floodplain, whether it be drainage, whether it be grading. The earlier the involvement, the better.
Why do you think some people aren't calling you in at the early stage?
That's a good question. It's something that we need to do a better job of communicating to the industry, the value that it brings to do so.
Okay.
We've talked about with Avila and Castillo Architecture doing a architecture and tacos sort of a seminar where we get to speak to clients and speak to what we need to be successful and deliver successful projects. And that's actually a great item to touch on, is engaging us a little bit earlier, getting a site feasibility study done.
In the end of September, I'm putting together a panel. Steven will be on the panel, and it's going to be a developer, a contractor, an architect, an engineer, and then us as a trade partner on the panel, kind of talking about how do we all work together because so many times everybody puts themselves in their own little, silo. And it's like, well, no. Like the architect needs the painter just as much as the contractor needs the civil engineer, like sometimes they don't put that equation together. So I'm excited about that coming up because I feel like communication. We all need to communicate even more than we already are. We may be communicating enough, but what if we just did a little bit more? So, and it's interesting coming from the engineering side to the trade partner side. I literally came from civil engineering, first thing that's ever done, to paint, which is the last trade in a building.
Right.
And so that has been like eye-opening for me. And I feel like everyone should have this experience like, oh, wow, there's a lot of people and it takes a lot of, communication, planning, time, all of that. But you didn't know it, but you do need the painter at the end of the day to make your project happen. So is there anything else that you want to touch on? I think we've gotten everything else that you put in your notes here. Anything about entrepreneurship?
Just show up, just do it. If you have that itch, you have to go out and try it, because I knew that as time went on, that itch became sort of a nag. If you find the right opportunity, let me rephrase that. Find the right opportunity, find the right person to do it with, and make it happen. It's extremely rewarding, and I'll never look back.
Nice. I love it.
And then going back on communication and being an engineer and staying in your own bubble, I would encourage, if you're an engineer, if you're a consultant, try to push the boundaries a little bit. It's okay to be proactive and reach out to the other consultants and sort of coordinate some stuff ahead of time. It's okay and I would encourage it to happen. Sometimes what I see happen is you wait to do some of these coordination items after SDs or DDs are delivered. And then the contractor is sort of playing catch up on pricing because some items aren't coordinated. So the more coordinated your set can be, particularly in the design build world, the better the pricing can be and the better decision making can occur and the VEs can occur concurrently with the project delivery.
Nice. Well, I think that's everything. So thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
Good.